Perfect. Yeah, as Christopher said, if you have any questions, just remember them, please, and we're going to have time at the end for you to ask anything what you would like to ask. So, as Christopher pointed out, DMA, Digital Market Act, we were thinking that we are all here on the same page. First, we would love to start with a short intro about what DMA actually means, what it is, and we thought the best person to do this would be Albrecht.
Okay,
so maybe we should start with a short impulse first.
Yeah, maybe just some words. So the Digital Markets Act is a new European law, and it is a global innovation of how to deal with the overwhelming powers of digital gatekeepers. And it stems from a decade-long fight of small companies like Idealo, for example, fighting against Google's preferential treatment of its own services on its result pages. But during this long, intense fight, it became obvious that the existing antitrust tools are not sufficient to deal with how we call it, ultra-dominant companies in these very fast-moving markets like the digital markets. And so we needed something new, something that was so powerful and effective that it could deal with these global companies that are used to outpower national authorities by armies of lawyers. And so the Digital Market Act was born. And we had the honor, together with Public Affairs of Axel Springer, to even put some words into it so that it would fit very good into our interests. And to be honest, I'm a lawyer from profession, and I did write laws myself a long time ago. And I have to say, this law is incredibly well written. I don't really understand how this works, because there's it started with the European Commission writing some passages, and then the Parliament adding something, and then the national states adding something, and in the end, it was is an unbelievable, well-written law. So my compliment out to everybody who was really taking part into it, and it has a very ambitious aim. In one sentence, it is ensure contestability and fair markets in the digital area. And the contestability is also against the existent ultra-dominant companies. So it has the aim to make even Google or Facebook contestable by some new one. So this is the aim, and it has the aim to be fair, right? And it's what is new about this European regulation. Usually our, let's say, legal teams have to deal with the regulations, say, oh, how can we ignore them, basically, as a company? How can we still be entrepreneurs? But this time, it is a protecting law for us businesses, right, against the super dominant businesses. And that is fascinating. And if I may continue, so if you would, for example, take Google, which is very important for anybody who has some share of search traffic, which probably is everybody that runs a company. It started as a online search engine, right? Pure play online search engine, 10 blue links, and if you found what you've seen, then they had the aim to directly, as fast as possible, to the website. And but over the years, Google enveloped or integrated more and more other services of Google or Alphabet now into the user experience. And so if you ask Google today, for example, for the weather forecast or current status of the soccer game or Tesla's share prices, then the search engine transforms itself into a journalistic medium and presents you the answer directly on the spot. So you don't have to go to a website anymore, but it is served you right there. And the same, for example, if you want to buy a washing machine, then the first results, and on the right-hand side and in the middle, wherever Google can find a spot where they put their own product, Google Shopping first, right? And since March this year, this is something that is forbidden under the Digital Market Act. So the Digital Markets Act says that a gatekeeper shall not treat its own services more favorably than the services of a third party. So the important point is, what is the sort of the core platform that is the service at the moment? So it is defined then by the designation decision. For example, Google Search is designated as an online search engine. Very well. So anything that is not an online search engine is a separate service. And so if this is integrated into this, other services that are similar to this have to be ranked not less favorably. That is shocking to some extent, because, as Mrs. Wester rightly pointed out, the gatekeepers have to change their business models due to the Digital Markets Act. So that is basically the introduction to the topic. I hope it was not too intense.
The good thing is that you pointed out already a lot of things where now we would like to go a little bit deeper. And I really encourage also Selina and Max just join in. I would just throw some questions which you summarized already a little bit. So let's start maybe with the first one. You pointed out a little bit already. Which opportunities is DMA offering, especially for companies, also coming from your examples?
Right. So I focused in the beginning on Google, but there are many more gatekeepers that are already designated by the Commission. So it is, for example, Microsoft, Meta, Apple, Amazon, ByteDance, TikTok, and since this week also Booking.com. And it's not only about self-preferencing, but it's also about fair and reasonable and non-discriminating, discriminatory treatment of the business use of all these gatekeepers, right? And that is not only reduced to search, but also to app stores. So, you know, if you search for something in the App Store, there might be good chances that products of the gatekeeper of that App Store are preferably treated. So again, it is helpful to have this DMA also if you only run an app, not so much search traffic, but it also is very important for everybody that has app traffic. And it is also about user choice. So usually if you have a browser, then you're recommended to use Google, right? But the DMA breaks this up significantly. So there, not everybody is ignoring the Digital Market Act. Google does it to some extent, but in some others they accepted it. And for example, now in browsers, I think after before the DMA, let's say 1 or 2% of the customers really did change the recommended search engine, right? But by today, I think it's 15. So this is something that really has impact, and this is what we expect to come to many, many businesses.
Max and Selina, what's your point of view for this?
So, hello everyone. I think from the perspective of Finanzen.net and myself, I'm not a lawyer by profession, so I have never written any laws. I've been doing business all my life. So for us, from a sort of smaller non-legal perspective, just from a commercial perspective, the DMA for the first time really offers the opportunity to sort of enact change in a way that you as a considerably small business and the Finanzen.net group, as we call ourselves very proudly, we're 150 people, right? So we're not that many. We're a small part of the Axel Springer family. It is possible for us to have influence on the legislation and on the future structure of our markets. And given the last, let's say, 15, 20 years or so, that's the first time. Yeah, and as I said, I'm not a lawyer, so I'm not a natural sort of commentator on such a topic, but with what Albrecht laid out and how we had our discussions sort of along the way, and I know you for quite some time, so I know how you have been sort of very strong about the Google cases, I learned that there is a possibility for literally everyone, yeah, to participate. And I think that's a huge advantage of this legislation, that it breaks up the structures which have been implemented for such a long time. And in my personal case, not being a lawyer, but with help of lawyers, I made my way to Brussels 6-8 weeks ago to actually speak in front of the European Commission, which, by the way, sounds much funnier and fancier than it actually is. It's an average administrational building somewhere in Brussels, but it's those people there who then do the legislation and work on the whole topic, listen to you. Yeah, so it is possible to actually drive to Brussels, go there and talk to them. Yeah, there are no defined processes, and we discussed that along the way. It's not that there is a central email, dma@europeancommission.org or something. So you need a little help if you're not a lawyer yourself, but there are people here at Axel who know how to do it, and you will always find a way. So I can only encourage everybody to really take the opportunity, as we did. And it was in our meeting. We are now in a sort of constant email exchange with the Commission. They limited to the certain amount of information they can share with us, obviously, but nonetheless, they reach out to us. We have an interaction, so we are participating to the extent which we can do as a sort of medium-sized company. And I think that's quite convincing, that it shows that actually there can be change. Yeah, so I can only encourage everybody to really use the time now to do this. I did it myself, yeah. So it's definitely possible for everybody else to also do it and not be afraid of this sort of anonymous commission which is somewhere in Brussels.
Thank you. Selina?
I think I can only agree. I think we are 1 or 2 steps back, but I was really grateful when Albrecht introduced us to the whole topic, to the opportunities that lay in there, and when we see the examples, we will also see that we are actually buying the same data that Google is buying, so we're actually in competition with Google, and to also have the discussions then with our data providers and be like, hey, do you actually know that your data is used by Google to kind of be in competition with all these different sports brands that you are providing with? And also shape the industry in that way is helpful, to not only wait for politics, but also try to influence business decisions.
Perfect. Let's stay right there, because you said competition with Google. Albrecht pointed out already Google is no longer a search engine. Maybe you and Max, you can tell us some more examples about how Google, without especially the DMA Act, is really interfering with your businesses.
Sure, I can start. I mean, we have, I think, 2 examples we can show, and you can all adapt them to your own favorite teams or sports. So one, for instance, if you Google Bundesliga-Tabelle, which is like our main competition in Germany, you will see that Google actually shows you the whole table of the German first soccer league. You can also, I'm not sure if you can see it, yeah. I'll just continue talking. So you see the table, you actually have the option to see further stats up top. If you play on Spieler, which is player in English, you'll actually see which player scored how many goals this season. So all these stats that we usually provide on our own site. And it's actually a huge part of our business model. So we always say our business is twofold. One is the stories we provide, which only our editors can find out. And the other part is really the stats every weekend, where we receive a huge part of our traffic, and also then our advertising revenues, because soccer fans, but also all other fans, they are coming to the site because they want to know how the game went, how their team is performing, how their favorite player is performing. And Google, with this service, doesn't let users come to our page, but already solves the problem of the users themselves. The second example I think we have is that of one of the football games. It's the same mechanism, so you can just type in Union Bayern or whatever match you're interested in, and you'll directly see the score of the game. You'll also see the live score, so if it's Saturday afternoon, you'll see which minute we have, what the current score is, which player scored, and then down below you see the videos, and also there's a part discrimination. because with BILD we actually have the official Bundesliga highlight rights, but because they are behind a paywall, so it's paid content, Google is not showing it because they say it's not good for users and they prefer free content on their own platform, which is YouTube. And
Sorry,
I think
Selina, do you have, I don't know if you are so deep, if you were already so deep in the analysis with Sportbild, but do you have an estimated amount of money which you're losing due to this already?
we don't really, because we can only see who comes to our platform and not who was already
Who would have come?
filtered out and who was lost in the funnel.
Yeah.
But I mean, we are also analyzing all the different changes with our SEO traffic, which is a huge part of our traffic.
Yeah.
So we do know that Google does have an influence, and we believe that a significant part is already stopped in the funnel and stays within Google and doesn't make it to our side and also to Kicker and all the other brands. So it's not only our own problem, but like the whole ecosystem.
Yeah. Max, how is it for you?
Sure. We've also provided an example for our company. Maybe you wait 1 second. You can probably do it yourselves. If you Google literally any stock in the German internet, usually Finanzen.net is the first organic result, right? And that's because we are as old as Google. The company was founded some 25 years ago. So I would assume that the algorithm somewhat learned on our data when it grew over the years and decades of Google. So if you do search, for example, Tesla Aktie, which we have provided here, you see that you have this, which is Google Finance. And then if you scroll down, you have changing parts underneath. You see news here, you see Finanzen.net news in the news box, and then you see the first organic result of Finanzen.net, and then those below are our usual competitors. You see that something similar is happening to what Selina described. You see that we are pushed down, we are pushed below the fold. We are still number one in the organic traffic, and we are everywhere. But obviously, and we cannot really quantify it to sort of answer the potential question, because it's difficult, right? The overall interest in the financial markets have been growing over years, right? So our overall traffic trend is positive. We highly benefit from all those peaks you have around COVID, around Bitcoin increases and top events which influence the capital markets. So the overall trend is positive, but just with a simple look on it, you see that we are pushed below the fold. If we can maybe briefly just go to the beginning of the video for 1 second and pause there, then just when we see...
already there,
that
just
one.
for 1 second ago. There's already here, you have the important answer even while you type in. So this is already journalistic content.
Yeah, and if you go to the the very top of the SERP there, can you hold there for a second? Thank you. So you see there that this looks quite familiar to people who use financial information sites from time to time, right? You have a chart, you have a price, you have a relative performance in a period of time. Yeah, you even have competitors. Yeah, you have information which usually comes from Wikipedia. You have information such as market capitalization, which is usually a KPI which is important around stocks. So this really is a product of its own, right there. Yeah, so it's much more than a search result, just giving information or linking somewhere. And the same holds true for us as for Selina and Sportbild, is that the data which is shown there is actually purchased by Google. Yeah, it's not scraped because they are legally not allowed, and actually those parties who provide the data, companies like Nasdaq and stock exchange in Frankfurt and in Stuttgart and everybody, that's where we get our data for, and we pay for it. We pay for it 7-digit, 8-digit a year for the data. Google also buys that and then really puts it on there. So it's not even a real search result, it's more a product. Yeah, and then you can easily, with the buttons you see there, Übersicht, overview, the video and compare and so on, you can then dive deeper into a very Finanzen.net-like product. Yeah, and obviously that is very strongly affecting the way people use our product.
Perfect. Thank you so much for those great examples. Selina, sorry, you want to add something?
Yeah, just maybe because also for us it's a 7-digit figure what we pay for our sports data, which for BILD and also Tordam is quite significant, and then for Google it's like play money probably. So you also there see again the different levels of competition, because we really need to think about every competition. Do we want to pay that amount? So for Bundesliga, it's a no-brainer because we have that many fans. But if you look at the second Bundesliga or third Bundesliga, at some point we're like, okay, how can we support this business-wise? And then for Google, they don't really need to ask that question because they have the money. So they even have a broader spectrum than we can provide to our readers.
And that is obviously similar for us, right? That we need to pay the data. And how do we monetize? Yes, we have since 21 also a neo broker, a business which is a different stream of monetization, but our core business is advertising. Yeah, so we need the people on our site. Yeah, it doesn't help us if we just can show a result somewhere, right? So we need the people on our site to monetize them. And plus we have an advertising monetization which is also different from idealo, for example, where you can easily use SEM. Right, I cannot purchase the readers which read my content. Right, it just doesn't hold true because I would need to fight against the neo brokers, yeah, who would probably bid for those keywords and then turn those users into their customers. Yeah, so it's not even a level playing field. So for us, this is really a very strong topic, and that's the reason why I went to Brussels, because I think there is something that needs to be done on that end to allow everybody, all those players in the German market and also internationally, to really be able to also thrive on a equal level playing field.
Albrecht, I saw you nodding already a lot of times. How is it with idealo?
Actually, what this move that Google does sort of is, I call it the transformer move. So they start this like this beautiful car, right, on a search engine, and then you give the right keywords and they turn into a war robot, right? Fighting off everybody that could be a threat to them as a search engine. You know, like 20 years ago or something like this, idealo even thought about becoming a search engine competing with Google. So that was, we thought about it, we invested in it, right? But you know, it is not possible anymore because Google is killing everybody that could grow into a certain level that it would be a threat to Google. So any vertical search like idealo, they have search knowledge, right? But if they keep them small and fight them with your war robots, then this is not possible. So, and the DMA also thinks about this. So this is why they wrote, it shall be even the core platform service of the gatekeepers, they shall be contestable one day, right? And so this is the dream we have. That's not only about fair and equal treatment, but as a result of this, there might be even competition in the level of the core platform services.
It's good that you pointed out already the topic of collaboration or the potential collaboration, because if we think a little bit bigger, from a, let's say, user perspective, I could also say I'm super happy that I get all your content for free in Google. So maybe looking from Google to Alphabet, the mother company behind it, the frenemy, we could even say. Wow, but it's a nice term also. In which areas do you guys think that collaborating with Alphabet could be an option, and why? Or is it not an option at all because they don't leave room for growth?
Well, actually, we have been collaborating with them for now almost 24 years. So, you know, the internet is not like, didn't start with a search, yeah? But it started with content, right? And so if you don't have content, you can't build a search engine on this. So, and that's why so we were there before Google came to Germany, right? And they had a huge success because we believed in the promise of Google that they made in the early years, that they would sort of invest everything to direct the user as quickly as possible to the website that provided them the content where they were fed on, right? And it is for a reason that, for example, idealo was for almost, let's say, 14 years since its founding, the top website within Google. So we were number 3 for many, many years in visibility, right after Wikipedia and Amazon. Then
on the German internet, right?
Yeah,
You were number
right.
3 on the German internet.
Right,
So
yeah.
this is quite massive, right? Think of it in nowadays terms. So that's
Right. Yeah, and this is where Google, so that was our deal, our cooperation. We provided the content, and Google could search upon it and give it to the results to their users. And then it would be fair if they get some advertising to run it. But it was a cooperation. But Google got too greedy in the end. And so what they're doing at the moment is basically they kill every content provider. And if you have a look into to America, it's drastic. So there's this saying, zero is dead, which means that Google is not anymore holding this deal true, right? So what they're doing at the moment is AI overview. It was, I think, the day before yesterday, it was officially launched in America. And this is basically, they give you a summary of what is in the internet, right? So it's interesting enough, how long can this be sustainable? Because in the end, who is providing the content that a search engine can live from? But I think modern CEOs don't think in this long-term perspective. Probably they make like 3 years more fantastic revenues, but probably then the internet crumbles.
Will the DMA save us from this?
Well, we see that many of the international the gatekeepers, they're operating differently in the US or in Landtam or India or wherever than in Europe. So this is true by now. For example, YouTube shopping is not rolled out to Europe for regulation reasons, right? And many other things. So I think it could be something, yeah? But it is about enforcing it. And 6 weeks ago, the European Commission opened non-compliance proceeding against Google on self-preferencing, right? So this topic is right here, right now, deciding this is the precedent case on how Europe will deal with accept these platform envelopment strategies. That is not only Google doing, but almost every of those gatekeepers.
So there is, as we see it, there is a possibility that it will actually change. Yeah. So the feedback we get from the Commission is always very diplomatic, right? It's that's their job. So, but still, you get the feeling that there could be, as they said, and I quote them there, quick fixes to certain things which we mentioned in our session. Quick fix in supranational terms probably means still like months or years, but yeah. So still, there is a certain likelihood, at least, that things will change. And that would probably decouple the European market to a certain extent from the international markets and would really give us as Europeans a new setup, yeah, for competition. It wouldn't mean that Finanzen, that idealo necessarily would be the long-term winners because there would be more competition, but I think that's something we're not afraid of, right? Like equal competition is fair, right? That's why we're all in business and maybe not in politics, right? So this is what we all aim to achieve. So I think it's really the moment where we can change things, and we don't need to feel too small in comparison to those great large companies who have always been around, right? Like we all somewhat grew up with the digital businesses. We somewhat naturally saw that Google and all the platforms grew year by year, but now is a point in time where you could do something, right? And it's always, I'm always talking about potential, right? There's no necessity that it all will be good in the end, and we all live happily ever after. But I think if we don't take this opportunity now, it will not be around in 3 to 5 years from now, right? So this and this is something that also for me is sometimes hard to understand. And I said Albrecht and I had discussions. We worked together before on the idealo and the Google cases to actually see that now you need to do something, and it's like a couple of people against those like anonymous large structures, but you can still go there to the Commission. There's a point of contact you can go to and still make a submission there. Yeah, so it's really worth trying it. So coming back to your question, I think it can change something, yes, but it's up on everybody to actually use the time to do stuff now, because it definitely will be too late in 3 years.
That was a lot of input already. I'm looking at the audience if there are already any questions at this point. I see one there, and we have an awesome stage manager with a microphone.
Stage manager.
Yes, I have 3 questions. Do you want them all at the same time?
No, one at a time, please. You're not so
Could you
intelligent.
briefly say your name maybe?
Okay, I'm Frank. I'm from the Axel Springer NMT OTT. So we're dealing with video streaming there, and have our own DMA topics there. But one question would be very easy. What's the separation of concern between the European Commission and the national authorities, like the Kartellamt, in this case? So how is this separated? Who's like taking care of what? Who would be the first one for addressing such topics?
Can we stop here?
Yeah.
Because I'm not so good in memorizing. So, the European Commission is 100% in lead. But the national authorities may give them hints, or may be consulted, or may sort of even ask the Commission for action, but they have no official role.
Maybe to add on that, because as the commercial person, it's not about what's happened in the past. It's not the Google shopping case where you have a court deciding about things. It's about changing what's happening in the future, right? So it's building the infrastructure or the guidelines of what's happening. Yeah. So that's why the Commission is.
Mm-hmm. Next one is as Axel Springer, as a huge company. We have sometimes, let's say, on a CEO level, interesting talks to companies that are concerned by the DMA. So what would be your message maybe to Matthias when it comes to like talking to them some serious words, or should they some official way to go, some red lines? What are your wishes there when it comes to like this overall corporate policy?
Well,
there?
we are in constant talks with the sort of Matthias Döpfner or Nidal or whoever is in this. But the recommendation is always to keep talking with everybody. That's always very important in any time. But also to establish a strong position, right? So we are not beggars anymore, right? And the Commission and the DMA make clear they're not gods, right? So it's good to maybe define the level where they are, where we are, and then talk. So we also, we have damage claims against Google, massive billion euro claims. So it's good to be in a strong position and then start talking.
And the same for Microsoft. I mean,
well, idealo is not, but I think I'm not allowed to talk about anything else.
Okay. Okay. Third one, last one is to play the devil's advocate. We had that already, but I think as a user, it might be a real advantage if I have all the search result in one. I mean, you're thinking of the business perspective, which is fair enough, but I mean, thing as a user, it would be, or is always nice to have one presentation of everything, one-stop service there for such things, and maybe it's some, I would say it's like an old business, or maybe you have to find new ways. So if you buy data that everyone else can buy, then of course there's competition there. So wouldn't it be better to have some more unique content and not? I mean, it's you can see what data Google can easily buy and offer this as a service themselves, like weather or sports data. I mean.
It's a fair point, right? It's simplicity over choice, right? So what you prefer? I think the answer is somewhat multifold. I think in general, it's good to have a certain level of competition in every field, because then you always have the possibility that there even is a better solution. So I would not believe that if Google is the only survivor, Google will be the best solution forever, right? So but that's a very sort of straightforward point. When it comes to the detail of the product, though, And that's something what you mentioned, Selina, with the second and third Bundesliga, that at a certain point it's not viable to purchase the data, then things get lost. What we have on our platform is, I would say, the price for cacao somewhere in East Asia, right, on a stock exchange there. That is something that does not exist. And you cannot search on Google for all the details of the P&L, and you don't have the earnings performance of the last, let's say, I don't know, 5 years or so. EPS development, analysis, all the content combined together. So Google in their product always stay at a sort of like traffic directed, probably very quantified from what they show and what they don't show, like high level perspective. Yeah, but if we cannot also gain traffic on the major keywords, right, then that really sort of struggles down our business model.
But don't your users know about it? I mean, then they would go to your site directly. So if they need this extra information, then they can come.
Yeah, they do that. They do that. But roughly half of our traffic is organic through the brand, and half is SEO. Yeah, so it's a viable chunk of the business we get.
Okay.
Selina, what would you say? Is your content not unique enough?
I think it's similar to what Max said. So we have unique content, but it's only like a part of our business. And the other part, as a sports fan, is all the stats, all the data. You could say, okay, if we now see that Google is doing it, we'll just stop doing it, save us the cost, and then see if we can survive on just doing the content. But that also means that we're very dependent on Google. Whenever they do something, we just say, oh, we'll just stop and leave. And I really liked Albrecht's point of seeing the long-term perspective, that also for AI to work and all these different tools to work, they actually need our content, because otherwise you can ask the AI, like, what's the new German soccer team for the summer? It only knows because there were articles about it, a press release, stuff like that. So it actually needs some feed. So in that sense, I think also Google is dependent on us and for us to survive, and we should therefore be more friends than enemies probably, because in theory we can thrive together and not compete together.
If I may add, rather polemic. So if you if I would reduce your question to, wouldn't be much easier if we would get everything out of one hand, right? As it is the aim of Google at the moment, right? So that raises the question, isn't it better to live in a dictatorship than a democracy, right? Because, if it's only one, then they will dictate everything that we will do commercially, because they will send us to the shop they like the most. Probably in the end, it's the Google shop, And we learned in the past in Germany that it's better to live in a democracy. And the same happens basically here in this internet. If you reduce it to only to few dictatorships, basically, then probably we are fucked.
All right. Any more questions? I see another hand there. Oh, two. Okay.
How does the Act deal with AI tools? For example, is ChatGPT also classified as a gatekeeper?
No, to be a gatekeeper, you need to have a certain reach, especially, and importance. Those widgets don't have it at the moment, right? But it does affect it to some extent that, at least to my understanding, these large language models in how they are sort of presented to the customer are separate products or specific services that are not yet existing on the core platform that by now, right? So they are a new service, right? It's not a logical evolvement, but it's on top of the search, for example. There is now this AI overview, or whatever is happening in Facebook and whatever. So this is a new, distinct service. And this would be something that the gatekeeper can't claim as that it's only one of these services present, but it has to give the same and fair and equal ranking to the competition. Right? So it's not Google creating its large language model and then tucking it on top of the result, and you can't use anybody else. So Google would have to find a way, if this AI overview would be the best way to deal with it as from a user perspective, then they would have to give the room also to ChatGPT and all the new emerging AI, large language models, which would be fantastic to some extent, but certainly Google wouldn't do it. So the DMA, in my interpretation, not in Google's, would be very interesting on this. So we would have a new competition, right? Not just on leveraged or leveled by the existing gatekeepers, but then, yeah, well, let's go. New AI company, to my understanding, every second week there's a new fantastic service coming up. I'm exaggerating, but you know, it might be a new competition on the merits.
Thank you. Then we have time for one last question.
Hi. The question I wanted to ask, it's pretty interesting to learn about idealo thinking at the beginning of competing with Google, being a search engine, and wondering the alternate universe where this happened, what would have happened. But what I am thinking is that now in different places in the world, internet is developing in different ways. I work in marketing in idealo, and we have to deal with GDPR, and our colleagues in Asia and in America don't. So I'm thinking maybe in the future, far future and so on, do you think that we will get to the point where internet in different areas will grow in a segregate way to the extent that is already present, for example, in China with the Great Firewall of China? Will we get there? Is it something desirable? What are the caveats? Thank you.
I can start.
I'll start you.
Okay, so if I understand the question right, it's more about the development, the separation of somehow fields as being one, right? We always talk about Google search, yeah, which to my sort of usage at least is already a different product in different geographic locations, right? If you, as you said, driven by GDPR, for example, it is different in the US than it is in Europe. I have no big exposure to Asia, so I simply don't know. But I would say it will definitely move into a certain direction to be more separate. I think the same holds true for AI to a certain extent. Like, how have all those large language models been trained? On English texts, yeah, it's, I don't know, it's the Google internet, yeah, it is Reddit, yeah, it's some thousand books or so, and mostly written in English. So what about the Chinese? What about the Arabic-speaking world? What about India and so on? So I think in all those models, some distinctive things are not really covered in a way by the models, and I think that also holds true for Google. So short answer, yes, I definitely think there will be separations in a certain way driven by the behavior and the needs of the customers. And I think that's for us another good point towards more competition, right? Because I think then you will probably end up with more opportunities for the user, sort of satisfying their needs and what they really want. But for that, you need to keep the competition alive to a certain extent. I think that's one of the big learnings in digital economy and network effects, right? You need at a certain point to interact with that and change it and somehow regulate it.
Anything to add here?
I totally agree, and I think it's mainly user-driven as well. We see it at Toralarm, where we have apps in different countries, and the way apps are built in Africa is totally different than here in Europe. So I think it's going to be compartmentalized further, both on the internet and then just like the usage by the customers, the way they live with their phones or other devices.
Yeah, and I think this might be very good, right? So we have more competition on the ideas. So it's not, at the moment it's like the US is the biggest market in the Western world, so everybody's starting there, and then they have the huge market ready for them, and then they outperform everybody because they have such a big home market. And it's very hard for a European company that starts maybe in tiny Germany or even in smaller countries like Portugal to then scale up in the world, right? So this is why the US companies are so dominating, right? And I think if we have now like a European internet, it might be very interesting what is then the creative power that comes in if it's not dominated by people that have this huge, super huge home market, but they can grow there. And I think Europe has been a great inspiration for the US. So we see that the US antitrust authorities, they are really in dialogue with the European, and they copy things from us. So things that they couldn't start with these huge, big tech companies because they have a conflict of interest. But once it's implemented here and the citizens are happy and they see, whoa, there's competition coming up and creation is as a result and more user choice, this is something good, and probably then the European precedent case will be exported to different companies, countries and continents, and probably we will also learn from them. So I think Africa, for example, is totally underestimated.
I think you noticed already we could go on and on and on for probably another 20 minutes, 1 hour. But as we are already, the time is already up, and there are a lot of other programs today at Media and TechCon, I would love to close it here. I think we are still around, so if you have any further questions, I think just approach us. I would love to thank you for being here, to having all those questions. Thank you so much for your participation today. And a big applause for Max, Selina, and Albrecht. Thank you so much. I hope you gained some insights and have fun at the rest of the Media and TechCon. Thank you.
Thank you.